Hi crafters, Raquel here from Paints and Glitter. I'm a crafter for Tonic Studios and I'm here today with the Homely Hugs gift box. I'll be making one of these with you today, and the first thing that I'm going to let you know is that this does contain a total of 28 dies. It creates a beautiful little gift box in the shape of a house, perfect for a housewarming gift or maybe a moving gift or just for cute little storage pieces that you can make to keep around your home. Now, the first thing that I'm going to show you is the pieces that you need to cut. So starting here, you're going to need this piece 4 times. You're going to notice that this has some little notches on the sides. So what you're going to do is that you're going to take your piece of card and you're going to line up your die. You're then going to use those little markers as the placement for the second one. So you're going to notice that on one end there are 2 little feet there, or 2 little legs there. On the other end there's only 1. So just make sure that you line this up nicely. Then go ahead and tack down this center portion as well as you can there, because that's going to create the cut that you're going to need. Okay, so then go ahead and cut this out using this die here. That's going to result in a piece that looks like this. Set that aside. For your second piece, go ahead and line up your die again. And you previously had cut it with the little piece facing diagonally this way. Now what you're going to do is you're going to switch it over clockwise. So that way you have those little legs again facing 2 on one end and 1 on the other end here. So make sure that lines up perfectly. That looks good. So once you have that tacked down, go ahead and cut through that. Now you can go ahead and remove this. And now you've prepared the 2 pieces you're going to need. Now make sure that you only use the solid die and cut out the papers that you choose to use for the outer portion of the little house. I've gone ahead and used some papers from 49 and Market, and we're going to now set these aside, but don't forget to save your little fallout pieces. You'll be using these a little later on. For our next step, we're going to create the inner boxes of the little house. You're going to want to cut this piece out 4 times. I'm going with the chili red paper, and then with this die here, you're going to create the sides of the little boxes. So if you're creating the 2 drawers, then you're going to need 8 pieces using this die. So once you have those cut out, just make sure that you fold and burnish the little tabs. Using a paper creaser will make this super easy. So each square is going to get 4 sides. Go ahead and take your longer tab, and that's where you can place your adhesive. And I like to place the square pretty side up right along the edge of that tab. Makes it a little bit easier for me. And once I have that nicely lined up, then I apply pressure with my paper creaser. And also flip this over and just make sure it's all the way to the edge, lined up nicely. And once you have that first one, it's going to help guide all of the other ones. So continue all around the 3 remaining edges, adding your tab to the bottom, lining that up nicely, and then you can burnish. I'm going to give these a moment to dry, and I'm actually going to do the second one the same way. set that one aside to dry as well. This one should be plenty dry by now. So now I'm going to flip that over and apply a second square on the bottom. It's going to hide those tabs, and it's also going to reinforce this nicely. Now you can take the side tabs and apply adhesive to those, and then adhere them to the adjacent tab. You're going to be creating another little box, so you will repeat the same steps by adhering the little side tabs, and that's what you see me doing here, to the adjacent panels. Now, I had mentioned that I'm using this decorative designer paper. However, you can definitely construct this out of 300 GSM if you would like to. And that way, it's up to you whether or not you line these little boxes, but Tonic Studios, of course, has a lot of different options for you. So if you'd like to perhaps line boxes with mirror card or anything like glitter card, you'll be able to make that choice when you shop. But here's the result of the two little boxes you'll be creating for this project. And here what I've done is taken again that side panel, cut away the two little tabs that I didn't want, and I created a liner for the inside using the same chili red cardstock I've used throughout this video. Now here you're going to stack the two little boxes together. Now let's grab the side panels that we had created and also cut out to have the two little apertures. Line this up with the stacked boxes and mark the little circles. Then add a little drop of adhesive and take the fallout circles from those same dies, or die cuts I should say, and then place them right on top of your markings there. You can definitely place that paper right on top again to make sure that you line them up correctly. And you're going to repeat the same step on the opposite side. However, make sure not to grab the same die cut, grab the opposite one. So you definitely want these facing in opposite directions. And also make sure that you're using the fallout circles from those same die cuts. Place them right along top there. And there you can see that you can use the die cut to make sure that you've lined them up properly. And once you have given these time to dry, let's revisit this now and place the matching die cut right on top. Make sure they're lined accurately, and now place a little drop of adhesive right in the center. Make sure you don't add too much. And now you're going to place the larger circles that you can cut out with the circle die included in your little pack of dies here, and place that right on top. What you want to make sure is that you give this an opportunity to dry, and also that the adhesive is not seeping out of the edges. So here you're seeing me do the opposite side, applying just a tiny little drop of adhesive and then covering that with the larger circles. This is what's going to create the kinetic part of this box, so make sure you give that an ample opportunity to dry completely. And now you're going to cover this with your designer paper of your choosing. And what you want to do is place the adhesive on that die cut that's on the bottom. However, you want to avoid the circles at all costs. So just make sure you put enough adhesive to apply your top layer without having that adhesive touch the circles. And then just hold that until it dries. Once that's dry, flip that over and you're going to repeat the same step on the opposite side. I'm using Nuvo Deluxe adhesive and my Sweet Petunia applicator gun, if you will. This makes crafting really easy, and these items are available from the Tonic Studios UK store. So if you'd like to use my link in the description bar, you'll be able to grab that as well. Now using this rectangle die, you're going to cut that out twice. Also cut out 2 triangles, and you're going to cut out 2 hinges using the dies shown here. You can also decorate this with the scallop die included. I've cut out 10 pieces, but you can definitely cut as many as you see fit. I've gone ahead and done that in several different colors, but we're going to start folding our little tabs on the opposite ends of the rectangle and burnishing those. They're all going to be mountain folds. This is going to prepare your little roof. Also make sure that you fold and burnish the hinge portion to get that ready. But we'll start at one end of one of the rectangles. Here you're going to apply some adhesive and then attach the shorter edge of one of the triangles. What's important here is that the angle of the long side of the triangle is opposite for each edge. You'll see that in a moment. So here's the second triangle on the second rectangle being applied on the opposite edge. And you see the angles there oppose one another. So that's how it should look. Now you're going to attach those 2 pieces along the center line using the hinge you had created. Make sure that you apply this to the underside of that paper and also that the fold line faces the edge. Also make sure you center it as best as you can and then burnish that in place. Once that's dry, go ahead and apply adhesive on the remaining tab, and that's going to connect the 2 rooftop pieces together along the center. So there I'm pointing out the angles being opposite again. Place that right on top and make sure you burnish this and also give that time to dry. Now before you finish the rooftop, this is when you're going to want to decorate it. So it's always going to be easier to decorate your 3D items while your paper is still flat. So this is an opportunity to do so. You're going to see how I overlap these scallop pieces, but it's up to you how you decorate your own. I took advantage of the pretty colors on this paper. I just thought it was so darling, and I did cut out, I think it was just one piece that was just purely white, but here you see it has a bit of a watercolor effect. I wanted to take advantage of that, but my scallops were a little bit close together, so I'm going to show you in a moment how I finish this. But this is the initial 5 on each side of that rooftop. So as you can tell, I burnished those nicely using my paper creaser. But let's close this off. Use the little tabs on the side of your rectangle, apply your adhesive here, and now you can match up the second edge of your triangle. And that's going to go all the way down the edge of that. And you're going to repeat that on the opposite side, of course. Now here's the little portion that should be on the eave of the house. I cut mine off multiple times using different colors of paper and using some tonic scissors. I've cut them in half, as you can see there, and I'm going to be using these also to decorate the eave of the little roof. So what I did is that I layered these right along the other scallops, and I did that in multiple colors, and then I did the uppermost portion, but of course this time I did not cut it in half. I just placed it right on top, and that was just a personal preference there to give it a little bit of a whimsical look, but of course you could just complete that as you like. Now here I noticed that there was a little bit of an overhang with these triangles, so I just took my scissors and cut off those little tabs that were visible there. I didn't like the way that they looked, so I'm always honest on this channel. If there's something I don't like, I take it away. But here is the second little hinge that you can create. Now, this is optional for you to even place on this. However, if you're going to place it on your project, you have two different ways in which you can do it. I'm going to show you one, and that is that I'm placing the folded edge, of course, of that hinge facing the outermost portion of that roof. And this is going to adhere to the box. Now you see the way that I've folded this. I'm just going to center that nicely, and now I'm applying adhesive on the outer portion. You can, however, apply adhesive to the inside and then adhere that rooftop to the outer edge of that box. I'm actually going to be adhering it to the inside. So this is all personal preference, but I thought it would fit nicely this way. And I do believe the instructions say to do it like this, so it's really up to you, however. But just make sure you burnish that nicely, and that it is also centered. There you get to see what it looks like on the inside. I'm going to cover the back with the solid square. So I'm actually placing the adhesive here on this rectangular box side. So an ample amount of adhesive there will allow this other square to finish this off, because this is actually the back of the house. So you want to do that to complete this and have a finished look, but it's also going to come in handy when you open the box. And the rest is going to be decorative. So what I've done is I took the die that cuts out the little brick layers. As you can see, it does cut a hollow little brick stack, but the little pieces that fall out of those little bricks you can then use, whether it be for a different decoration that you want to make, or you can simply use the same exact die, that's what I did, and cut it out of a different color. So this gives you options as to how you decorate your little house. Now this is the little front door. You can place this wherever you like. I've cut it out of the chili red cardstock, and I'm placing this on top of the solid rectangle that you can cut using these dies. And this is going to then be the front door. You can use that same die if you would like to, because it cuts out the little squares and cut those out in multiple colors. But I'm simply using the holographic paper because it's one of my favorites. But now let's make some bay windows. You have a die that will allow you to cut this, and what you want to make sure is that you cut it out twice per window, and that you also fold all of these score lines as you see in this video as a mountain fold, and make sure you burnish them nicely. Because this is small and it's quite delicate, then just be sure to follow along the score lines and give yourself time to fold that paper so that you don't accidentally make it buckle. So this is the part of the video where I typically say in my tutorials, don't try to rush this part because it'll give you a really nice result if you don't. Because you have to remember that crafting should be relaxing. This is something that you don't want to rush through. But hopefully watching these videos help for you to see realistically not only how many pieces you should be cutting for a finished project, but also how you can prepare, for instance, if you want to make multiples. Now here's the dies that you can use to layer right on top. What I've done is that I've taken the little window die, and I've also cut out that holographic paper once again as the solid piece, and I'm going to show you here. You need very little adhesive to go ahead and layer these together. And in fact, I tapped that on the back of my hand to remove some of the adhesive. And because of how I want this to look, I'm actually cutting away the edge. This is going to help this little window fit on that box portion a little bit better, in my personal opinion, of course. So just cut that away, and now you're going to want to layer these one on top of the other to create the style of window. So make sure that you match these. And then this is the back side. Once you've layered those together, flip it over and apply your little window portion to the front. And this also comes with two other little dies. I've adhered them in the same fashion onto holographic paper, and these will go on the two opposite sides of that larger window, and those will fit very nicely. The paper is already scored, so you'll see where they fit. Once those are dry, make sure you fold in those tiny little triangles. You want to make sure that those fit inside of the adjacent tabs so that they're not poking out of the window. So fold in the two narrow tabs, apply your adhesive right on top of those, and then fold over one of the square portions. Make sure you squeeze this together a little bit and hold that in place until it dries, and then do the same with the opposite side. Fold it over, and this is going to create your little box windows. So here's a little faster version of what I just did. But of course, you decide however many windows in this style you want to create for your little box house. Just make sure you plan ahead as to how much room these will take on the little box. And I would advise that you only adhere them to either the sides or the front of the little box, just so that it can still open and close nicely. So you see it's a little bit fiddly, but that's because of those little tiny triangles. I was wanting to make sure that they face the inside and that they don't poke out of the little corners. Once those are ready, of course, you can now use them to decorate your little house. I think they're so super cute. So I'm placing two on the front, and I'm using these for the uppermost portion of the little house. And I just eyeballed this, but of course you can use a ruler if you would like to. But there's this other little portion I wanted to show you. This is the little flower box, or you can definitely use it as an eave for a window if you would like to. You're going to fold it all as little mountain folds, but one of the folds is actually angular, so I'm just using my fingernails. It's easier for me to do so. What you want to make sure, however, is that you only apply adhesive to the little portion that is rectangular there. So hopefully you can see that. You can definitely pause the video if you need to. But I'm showing you there where the adhesive goes, and then pinch in those two little tabs so that they match the edge of that tab you're folding in. And then hold that in place. As you can tell, I have one on the table and it's being held with tweezers because it makes it a lot easier. Now here's just a simple window. You can definitely just use the flat window shape along with the shadow. So you don't necessarily have to use the box windows. It's all personal preference, but they all look really cute, and I thought these would look really nice along the bottom portion of the little house with the little window box. So I'll be adding these to the front as well. I'm using also the Arctic Blue layer on top of the holographic mirror card from Tonic Studios. And here is that Arctic Blue little window box. Just lining that right along the bottom. And in this case, I'm using it with the scallops facing up because I want it to be a window box, but alternately you could move those windows down a little bit and place them with the little scallops facing down, and that would create a completely different look, which would be absolutely adorable. So don't forget, you can make multiples of these little houses and just create like a little village. I think that would be so super cute. And you can also cut into the base box with those little window layers if you wanted to, and then add vellum behind them and create a little bit of a shadow. So let's create the little windows that can go on the roof. Here you're taking the triangular little die cut piece I've used the Arctic blue again and then back that up with holographic paper. Then there's this little triangle that you see me folding. It's got a little scalloped edge, and then there's the larger triangle here. All of these are going to be mountain folds, so just go ahead and fold those little tabs on the two opposite edges, and then fold it along the center as well and burnish the folds. Now that you have that fully burnished, take the smaller little triangle and add adhesive to the two small tabs that are facing the pointy portion of that triangle. And that's going to nestle right along the edge of the larger triangle there. However, you want to make sure that the scallops face the edges and that triangle is not too far back. Now you're going to use the larger tabs along the bottom and also the one little scallop tab. Apply adhesive there and then point this toward the roof of your little house, making sure the pointy edge faces the top of the roof. And you can select a little area where you wish this to be located on your little house. And of course you can apply more than one. So here I've done this where you can see a little bit better what the house will look like. So just space these apart and then hold those onto the roof until they dry. And here I'm placing another little box window along the side of the little house. And what I decided to do was to use one of the trellis pieces. Now they don't come with a solid matching piece, but all you have to do is layer this on top of another piece of card and then cut along the edges after you adhere it, and you get yourself a little shadow. I'm using that holographic paper once again, and I'm placing this underneath the box window. And on the opposite side, I just placed two of these, one on top of the other. The die cut is tall enough that you can definitely place this, and these are going to be the same color. I have the Arctic blue on top of holographic paper here. And as you can tell, I've also used the little brick die to cut out other little bricks, and off camera I'll be placing those inside, but all you need is one little drop of adhesive and then they'll match perfectly, so you can keep decorating these. But here there are the little flower dies included in this set, and that's what I'll be using to decorate the little trellis. I've just cut them out of white cardstock and also added Nuvo drops in the centers, but there is a matching center die, and you'll see that a little later on. Don't forget that Tonic Studios does have a lot of different Nuvo drops that will match all of the papers available. So in this case, I've used 3 different colors of drops because I wanted them to match the background colors. But you have your choice of glitter drops, there are vintage drops, dream drops, so many kinds, and it's a lot of fun to use those. So here I'm just going to finish decorating the sides with the little flowers. And of course, this is all personal preference, so there's no wrong way to decorate these. It's just a lot of fun to let your imagination take control, of course, and then make the little houses look as you like. There was so much color in the background of these little houses that's what I decided, that's why I should say I opted for creating more colorful flowers and have the little flowers just have the white petals. Now let's make the little roof. I'm sorry, the little chimney for the roof. So you're going to be cutting this piece out twice, and this is a little bit more square. It's a lot like the window, the box window. However, you're going to fold all of these little tabs and score lines as mountain folds as well. And you're going to notice that two of them end up in little peaks. But just make sure that you fold these and burnish them nicely. Once you have those all folded, the two squares in the center are going to overlap each other, and this is of course the wrong side of the paper. So I have the pretty paper facing down. So match up the little squares and make sure you give this time to dry. Now you're going to follow the little tabs on the edges. And this is what's going to help you close this to create what's going to look like a little box. So along those little tabs you'll place your adhesive. And then match up that edge. You're going to do the same thing on the opposite side. And you'll notice that there are also the little side tabs. So what I did here was that I held both of them at the same time to close that off, but it's going to look like a little cube when it's all said and done. And because sometimes these pieces are rather small and fiddly, I like to use reverse tweezers to hold it all together. It really does come in handy. But as I said before, you're going to repeat the same steps on both sides. So here I actually ended up pulling off the paper, but it was okay because the paper is plenty thick. So I just applied the adhesive and closed that back up again. Once that's nice and dry, you get to see that the bottom portion has the little tabs that are a little bit more pointy. Those are what's going to face the eave of the little rooftop. So you can just press that down right on the top and it should nestle very nicely, but you do want to apply a little bit of pressure to make sure you don't get any gaps. And then just hold that until it dries, and there's the result. Hopefully you can see how that was able to fit nicely. And now you get to see how it is that this little house will look when it's complete. I did add two more little flowers to the little flower boxes at the bottom, and I decorated those with Nuvo drops in the center. However, you can definitely use the die included to create the centers of the flowers if you would like to, or you can just use those little circles as decorative pieces onto the roof or any portion of this little house as well. But I wanted you to see how I decorated the little brick sides. And I also created a 3x3 little card using the dies. I used those leftover little bricks that I had cut using the chili red paper. And I wanted you to see that with that little die, because it creates both the outline and the solid layer, then you can of course combine that to your heart's content. Those are the little pieces that had fallen out. I just went ahead and saved them and used them for that little card. Then using the trellis portion, I did cut out the little portion behind the word sweet, and there's the little circular die for the flowers that I use. I cut that out of that holographic paper and used the chili red paper also for the little flowers. And the rest was the trellis portion that I'm pointing out there. Of course, I cut that and then layered it with a solid piece, and then cut out the home words twice and layered them one on top of the other so that I could have a little bit of a drop shadow. But that's a super easy way to use these dies along with your little Nuvo drops or anything else you might want to use to decorate this. I think it's absolutely darling. It's super easy to go ahead and then use this to store any goodies that you may want to either organize or use it as a gift box, of course. But here's the finish side and the other one there. I thought it looked so darling with the shine of that mirror card, and you don't need a whole lot of it for it to really make an impact on your projects, but it opens nicely both on the top and also on the sides. So you do have to hold it a certain way, but once you figure it out, it's super easy, and that way you can fill this with goodies and give it to a loved one or just surprise someone who's purchased a new home. I think that would be so nice. And there you get to see that the whole thing lifts up, and that's how you can open the box. But I do hope that this tutorial has been helpful to you. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me. If you're new here, I do invite you to subscribe to this channel and make sure that you save any 3D tutorials or memory book tutorials or card tutorials. You can save them to your own playlist on YouTube if you would like to, so that you can refer back to them. I do look forward to sharing even more tutorials with you throughout this year from Tonic Studios and elsewhere. This is always so much fun. I love making 3D projects with you. And of course, if you do create anything with these dies, also share them over on the Facebook group for Tonic Studios. It's the official Facebook page. And then add the hashtag show tonic. If you want to show me, do the hashtag paints and glitter, and that way I'll be able to see it as well. But as I always say, I do hope that this can be for your inspiration, that you can be blessed, and I thank you so much for watching.